Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. This is actually our last presentation that's going to be held at Chik-Wauk this year, or this season. So we want to thank anybody if they've come before to any of the presentations. It's been a great turnout all season long, and in order for us to have these presentations, we get the support from Visit Cook County and the Gunflint Trail Association. And so that's how we are so, the opportunity for us to have one almost every week this summer. So it's always great to see that, and we're very happy to have special presenters like Erik here. It's been a lot of different topics that we've had this year, and so we're very excited to introduce Erik Simula and his Arrowhead Journey.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Beautiful weather. Yeah, I'm happy to share my story with you. And it's really our story, because I'm just traveling through. But I think I will sit down over here. Or where would you like to go?
That's fine.
And can everyone hear okay?
Yes.
I'd like to start out with a land acknowledgement for the indigenous people of this area. So there have been many different indigenous groups living on this land, in this area. Certainly the Ojibwe, Anishinaabe people, and Dakota people most recently, and others before them. And we just want to acknowledge that this is their home territory, and most of us are non-indigenous to this area. And so I think it's important to honor that and respect it, and understand that we're here largely because of the treaties that we've signed, and we want to honor and acknowledge those treaties and the sovereign status of the Native people. So I'm Erik. I'm originally from Duluth, and my heritage is of Finnish and Sami and mixed European descent. So it's from that standpoint that I speak. And it's taken me over half my life to kind of understand that that's where my grounding needs to be. And I'll preface that with my experiences and interests have opened doors for me, because I pursued dog mushing and canoe building and pretty much all things outdoors from a land-based traditional way of life, because I wanted to know how the Native people lived so I could learn how to best live and take care of the land. And because of that, I've been working with tribes at their request to help share the canoe building skills that I've had. And so I've learned a lot from the indigenous cultures, and mostly the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe people of this area. So when I'm talking with tribes, I want to make sure that I'm talking from my own foundation of who I am. And that's where my heritage is important to understand. And it's from that perspective that I share with others. I also want to make some acknowledgments. There's many people that have befriended me and mentored me and supported me and helped me my whole life. And certainly up the Gunflint Trail, I want to acknowledge Bob and Sue McClellan from Bearskin Lodge, because they've tolerated me and worked with me for many years as I guided trips for them with the dog sledding program. But there have been many, many others too. Certainly my family, my friends, neighbors, all kinds of people, as you can imagine. But it's important for me to voice that and let you know that I'm very thankful and grateful to all of you as well for being here and listening. And most of my slideshow, I'm not going to say much. I'll let the slides and photos and images do the talking. But I'm certainly willing to discuss and answer any questions. But also, if you have comments or suggestions, because I'm writing a book about this journey. And I have many piles of manuscript drafts. But I took the trip in 2009, and I'm still learning. So 15 plus years. And I'm at a point where I feel ready to rewrite it for a final time and get it published, because it needs to be told. So enjoy my story. So this is a hand-drawn map that shows my rough route. So I started in Grand Portage on Lake Superior in April, paddled southwest to Duluth, northwest up the St. Louis River, across the Savana Portage to the Mississippi, up the Mississippi, across the height of land again to the headwaters of the Big Fork River, flowing north to the border, and then turning east on the Rainy River, going upriver, coming back the Voyageurs Highway back to Grand Portage. Along the way, I approached this trip much different than all my other trips. So I started guiding canoe trips out of Ely when I was 17 years old, and I've guided my whole life by canoes in summer and dogs in winter. And growing up, it was all about traveling miles, doing routes, seeing the country, putting lines down on a map. But that changed. At first I wanted to gain the skills, see the country, but soon thereafter I realized that I wanted to slow down and experience it more deeply and connect with the people and really connect with the land. And part of that was a learning curve of learning how to build the birchbark canoe, because that was really my passion and drive when I was in my 20s and 30s. And that brought me to the Anishinaabe language and meeting native elders and learning from the original creators. And along the way, I was transformed. And that's why my story, I feel, is unique, because I'm changed in a positive way. And I think our society needs some of what I learned, and that's why I want to write and share. This is the longest narrative I'm going to read. The Arrowhead Journey is about the Arrowhead region in northeast Minnesota. Its natural and cultural history, the people, all the beings, the landscape. It's about who we are as a people, what we've done, and our passage through time. And even in the last 15 years since my trip, so much has changed. And yet, the saying goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's also about my own life and how I've personally gone through my life and what I've done, what I've learned, and now it's my responsibility to share the knowledge I've learned. The Arrowhead Journey is a metaphor. I think of the arrowhead as a stone tip of an arrow. We all know what a journey is. A physical journey, a mental journey, a spiritual journey. Here I wrote from the Stone Age to the future. So I started the trip in Grand Portage for a number of reasons. One, I had been working there for 15 years as a park ranger with the National Park Service. And I came to understand how important and significant geographically Grand Portage was in the fur trade era. And certainly to the Anishinaabe, also known as the Ojibwe or Chik-Wauk. But the Grand Portage Anishinaabe settled there, and this is their homeland. And this map kind of shows the gray area as their primary area, home turf. And I like this map because it shows the indigenous place names. And there's great knowledge embedded in those names. There's the reconstructed fur post at Grand Portage that was in its heyday in the late 1700s. And so I was fortunate to work there as a summer seasonal ranger. And I specialized in the birchbark canoe. So I was able to build them and interpret the process. And you can see it goes from a birch tree and through knowledge and skill that's handed down for many generations, the ability to craft a very impressive vessel. That's seaworthy, dynamic, living, beautiful.
How much do they weigh?
The canoes weigh varying amounts based on not only the size and the design, but also the materials. So you can have thin birch bark or you can have thick birch bark. You can make them light and delicate, or you can make them strong and tough and heavy. And there was a time for each. The big craft you see there is 24 feet long, known as a fur trade canoe. That one weighs approximately 90 to 120 pounds dry. In use, if the cedar ribs and planks are heavy with water, add 10 or 20 pounds. But that's a workhorse of the fur trade.
Was that used on Lake Superior or inland?
The fur trade canoes of this size were used both on the Great Lakes as well as inland. They were designed for the fur trade mostly west of Lake Superior. They used bigger ones to the east.
What does the picture on the left?
The picture on the left is showing a living birch tree being harvested of its outer bark. And that is used as the outer hull or skin of the canoe.
And are many pieces sewn together to make the canoe, or is it made from one main piece?
All the above. Meaning, ideally, you build a full-size canoe out of a single sheet of bark. That way there's less seams on the bottom to leak. I'll get more into that a lot. That's a beautiful sheet of bark. That is extremely hard to find. So you're always looking in the forest, at the trees, at everything, the environment.
Is there a certain time of year that it's best to harvest?
That was taken in the end of June or early July, which is normally the time it comes off the easiest. You've got winters. The winter tree is a little dry, and as it gets warm and moist with the heating of the summer, the sap underneath the bark tends to flow. Also realize this is the outer bark, and you try not to damage the candia, and they will continue to grow and reheal or heal and regrow their bark. So my trip was in 2009, and I've been planning it for over 10 years. It slowly evolved, and the timing was right. So I finished my last project at the park in 2008. This was the last canoe I built at the monument, and it's now hanging in their visitor center, as you see, in Grand Portage. And I wish I had taken this canoe on the trip. So it begins, April of 2009. The photo on the left is my wife and I, my wife Dawn, and she was my main support person on the trip. So I can't give her enough credit and thanks. The photo was taken 2 days before I left Grand Portage by canoe, because we had gone to Duluth and Grand Rapids and Crane Lake to stash my food packs. So I have 30 days packed out, started with one, picked three more up on the way. So I was stocked up for a 120-day trip. You can see the ice on Crane Lake in the background there.
Oh, yeah.
In the center photo is my father, Vern, and myself. And that's known as the Pines. It's a nice gathering spot at the mouth of the Grand Portage Creek near the National Monument on the Grand Portage Reservation and the monument grounds. It was a historic camp during the fur trade days where many voyagers would tent and camp there, especially at the Midsummer Rendezvous. And it's also always been a special place for the Grand Portage Ojibwe people. I had about 20 people or so come down to send me off with good wishes. The other story embedded in that is that pair of snowshoes. So let's jump to the photo on the right. That's my daughter Anna. And that's taken along the Mississippi River after we were dog sledding one nice March sunny day. And she was living in Grand Rapids and was graduating high school. So I decided to make her a pair of snowshoes for her graduation present. And I was going to carry them with me because I thought I want to attend her graduation and I'd paddle there. And I'd take her snowshoes with me. But my dad talked me out of it. So he brought them by car to Grand Rapids a month later when I arrived. And then Anna got her snowshoes for her high school graduation. So that was part of the reason I took this trip. And I said the timing was right, and that was one of the reasons. The real story is when I left, I went around the dock and paddled out of sight, and my canoe was leaking so bad, I went immediately to shore, unloaded everything again, waited an hour till the bark dried out, heated up the pitch pot, re-pitched it, got back on the water. So 3 hours after I started, I was only 100 yards away. And there's an old Sami saying that, so the first day goes, so goes the journey. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. If you look on the bottom left photo, you can see a canvas canoe cover. Once again, Dawn came to assistance and did the final sewing of that for me. And this was when I made Grand Marais, because I really needed it on the big swells. And in between Grand Portage and Grand Marais, it took about a week or two, maybe a week and a half, because I was windbound over half the time from the storms. And paddling in rough seas with a winter outfit in a small canoe is pretty dangerous, especially when there's shelf ice and hard to get off the water. But if you look close at that spray skirt, right under my paddle is Kitigan's nose. And when the seas were rough, she would, we both would get vertigo.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a learning curve. And she was only a year old.
Oh.
She's a German short hair, bred with a husky, and a great companion. I had many challenges, many stories to tell. The whole trip.
Did the dog take the whole trip with you?
The dog took the whole trip with me, yes. So I'm a great, I better be careful. I consider myself a fairly skilled paddler. And I paddle hard when the seas are rough. And when I was cutting across from Leicester Park in Duluth to the ship canal, there was a storm rolling in. It was the only day of the whole trip that I didn't have my morning coffee. Because I got a 3 a.m. start to beat the storm in. And she was kicking up pretty good. And so I was cranking on my paddle. That big paddle on the right, that's a Voyager blade. It's a secret weapon for making miles. But as I crossed, there were tourists out on the lighthouse pier, and they called 911 and reported a canoeist in trouble. And so I'm paddling through the canal, and I took on some water, but I was making good headway. And this fireman comes down the ladder and says, "Give me your dog, give me your dog." And I'm saying, "What's going on?" And we had a little conversation. And it quickly dawned on me that if I resist help, it wouldn't be a good thing. And I didn't want to, I just wanted to paddle through. It's not the first time I've done this between Grand Portage and Duluth. But it fills up with water because in that ship canal, you have clapotis, which is a mariner's term for, sometimes referred to as confused seas, where you have reverberations off rocks and different angles of waves, and so you have this jumbled up and down water that can go way beyond the normal wave height. And that's why the canoe fills up. So I was just paddling through, and we were doing pretty good, but then I had to go up the ladder. And then they wanted to tow my canoe. I said, "No way, let's take it up the ladder." And they said, "No." The Coast Guard came in and they towed the canoe away. Let's go back here for a minute. There you can see the Coast Guard raft on the top right. Or maybe it was a Duluth fire raft. And it was the only time the whole trip I did not have control of my outfit.
Oh.
And I thought, if they dump it, right? But they didn't. They charged me. No, they wrote me a warning ticket for a life jacket that you couldn't read the lettering on. They said it was too worn up.
Oh my gosh.
But we survived, and I kept in good spirits, and we continued on. This is the St. Louis River estuary. And this is one of the many places where there's a deeper story to tell. There's so much history here. Starting with the homeland of the Ojibwe, the Fond du Lac band of the Anishinaabe. This is their home turf and where their village was for many years. Think about Jay Cook State Park, the estuary. It's one of the largest and most significant estuaries in the Great Lakes. It's also home to a lot of toxins and pollution and shipping and industry. And there's Superfund sites there that are still being remediated. So what did we do to that environment since settlement? We have lessons to learn. Beautiful area. They're restoring the wild rice beds. They've stocked, largely led by the tribal people, as well as help with the DNR and many agencies working together and community groups. They're doing great work there. They're coming around, but it's taken a lot of effort. They've restocked the lake sturgeon, and many other species are starting to come back. More work to be done. Here's some old, a sketch on the left of the Fond du Lac trading post in Ojibwe encampment. And then on the right is one of the earliest photos of the ruins of where the trading post was. So a lot of history, lots of history. And I'm just scratching the surface. So there's more to dig and write and learn from and share. So I made Duluth, and now the next leg was upriver. And I timed it going clockwise on my route, so I'd have high water for going up the St. Louis River. First, there's a Grand Portage of the St. Louis River. Gitchionigaminsing. Gitchionigaming is the Grand Portage of Grand Portage. But in both cases, you have a lot of elevation gain in the first 10 or 20 miles going inland from Lake Superior to the more flat water that's more easily paddled. Plus, the dam on the right is the Thompson Dam in the Cloquet area. And so, historically, they were based on water levels. Maybe, I forget the exact mileage, but I want to say like 7 to 12 miles of carrying around water levels there. Whereas in Grand Portage, that's more stabilized at about 8.5 or 9 miles one way. Significant portages. This is going up the St. Louis River near the town of Floodwood, and it's where you diverge from the St. Louis River and go up the East Savana River, and that's one of the several most common routes to go from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi. And since probably 1870s, very few people paddled because the railroad was put in. But I had to do it. I wanted to do it. But everyone told me, don't do it. It's miserable. And there's a time to not pick up your camera. Like when a cougar's 5 feet away from you. Yes. And when the cougar left, I took down my tent because I didn't want to sleep at that location. And here it comes back. Faster and louder. So I thought. But then it turned out to be a big black bear. So I told this story to a good friend of mine in Duluth, artist Dan Coulivar, and he sketched this for me. So I'm going to ask him if he'll sketch 1 or 2 more. which I'll cover later in the journey. This was a powerful encounter. It looks pretty tame compared to beautiful area though, so rich with wildlife. It's a big swamp. If you've driven west of Floodwood across the Grand Rapids, you cross this enormous swamp. That's what the voyagers had to cross. That's what I crossed.
What's it called?
It's known as the Savana Portage State Park, managed part of it, present day. But it's a wild area, mostly because it's swampy. And then you have a lot of beavers and wildlife in the wetlands. And they make dams, and any trails or portages are constantly shifting. So it's very difficult terrain to travel. That's what it looks like in the photo. So I ran out of water to travel upriver at midnight. Well, during the night after I departed from that camp or I should say that place alongside the river in the marshy grass where the bear and cougar were, and a night paddle to make some distance. And the temperature dropped below freezing, and the dog kept falling asleep, and I bet we crossed dozens of beaver dams that night until I couldn't find my way out of the last beaver pond. And I knew we had to be getting close to where it transitioned. So this is when I woke up that morning and took a compass bearing and started bushwhacking, leapfrogging. And there was so much bear activity in that area and brush that I carry the packs about 40 feet and drop them. Go back, get the canoe, leapfrog, so I always had 3 points of reference to maintain direction because you couldn't see through the thicket. Kitigan I always left with the food pack, and we did that for half a day until we got to this section I recognized, and there was a sign there. So I had made it through kind of the hardest part of that navigation. It's beautiful, so much wildlife. Kitigan would pull me across every portage. She's a sled dog. She's awesome. All I had to do was not pick on my feet up, and she would pull me forward. And she was very polite and well trained, and it was awesome. A lot of repetition. We got it down. We were a great team. Here's another historical event that is worth learning from. If you haven't heard the Sandy Lake tragedy, look it up. It's heartbreaking. It was around 1850 when, for many years, the U.S. government was trying to push the native people west. And finally, the Ojibwe in this area took a stand and said, we're not moving. And war was about to break out. And so there was a lot of wrongdoing and hardship. Many people lost their lives. The net result was finally a treaty in 1854 that ceded the Ojibwe ceded the lands of what's northeast Minnesota. But it's a powerful and troubling story. Here's my friend Tim George on the left that I work with on the ambulance service in Grand Rapids, welcoming me to Grand Rapids, and my daughter Anna at her graduation. So it was less than half the mileage of the trip, but it felt like halfway. The return trip is much longer, but it's what I was really looking forward to, especially the route from International Falls to back to Lake Superior. I paddled a lot of it, but never quite like this. And a lot of my buddies and fellow guides, if they get a summer off or even a couple of weeks off, they want to do an Arctic river trip. And I thought, you know, I've done that. I want to stay home. This is my version of staying home and paddling. So it was upriver on the Mississippi, but boy, did I see the wildlife there too. Huge fish underneath. And on my trip, I saw a bald eagle every single day. Every day. That's something. I'd get up early. The earlier I could get up and on the water, the better my day. This is Lake Winnipegosh, Big Winnie. This is where you leave the Mississippi River and Portage northeast 3 miles to the headwaters of the Big Fork River at Bowstring Lake. There's several routes through there. But then it's downriver heading north. This is the Big Fork River, which is wild. Even though it's not really protected, it's pretty wild. The town of Big Fork, I believe, uses the term edge of the wilderness area for their tourism marketing. But beautiful terrain. And what's that hole in the canoe? What I found was going up the rivers, there were many areas, there were no portages, and the water levels were such where you couldn't really pull the canoe up very easily without hitting rocks on the bottom, as much as I tried. And eventually the bark abraded, and you would get blisters in between the layers of bark. Think like if you were pounding on it many times, you know. And then the problem is water gets in between the layers and it acts as a wedge, and then it gets worse. And I kept pitching the canoe every day, a little bit, touching it up, until finally I thought, you know, now I'm on the Big Fork River, I'm going downriver, I'm going to have less upriver rapids, and it's time to fix that canoe. So I had a 12-hour day. I took the old bark out. I carried bark with me when I started. I cut a piece and repaired it. And right at the 12-hour mark when I finished, a thunderstorm started pouring down. So I made it just in time. But then for the next 3 days, it leaked like a sieve. And I thought, what did I just do? But I got it. Kept pitching. Pitch is awesome. Kind of like duct tape. Just put more on. On the bottom, you can see what I call the slowest canoe I've ever paddled. You got those 3 big ridges across. And partly because this bottom hull, back to our earlier conversation about how many sheets of birch bark does it take to make a canoe. This one was made with 2 nice sheets of bark, so there was a seam under the bottom. And then when I cut the bottom section off and sewed a patch on it, then I had 3 seams across. That's why I say it really slowed me down. But it's repairable, and the energy in this canoe is unbelievable. You might paddle a little slower, but the wildlife responds to it. It's amazing. More on that coming up. That's heading down the Big Fork River. High water there. At this point was the only time I really got lonely. Partly because I left Grand Rapids with visiting my family and seeing my daughter Anna graduate. But my son's there and relatives. And my dad stopped and visited me along the route, as did Don. And my dad had he didn't tell me at the time, and I didn't know this till later, but he had some heart issues. At this, right here where I was carrying the packs, I was visiting with him for a while, and he said, If I don't make it, don't come to my funeral. Just keep paddling. How do you paddle away from that? You do. We all do. We keep going. I had to slow down or we would have collided mid-river. It's one of my favorite photos. As I was going north of Big Winnie, I didn't see much bedrock like on the North Shore or the Canadian Shield. And when I got to Big Falls, I saw my first lead drop. And it was like I came alive. I missed the bedrock. On the right, that's at the confluence of the Rainy River now. And so that's floodwaters. So I could paddle through the trees because the trees would slow the current. There was a lot of current in the Rainy River, and it was powerful. If I paddled straight up the current, I'd exhaust myself and make hardly any headway. So it was a challenge, unexpected. But the trees would block the current, so like I could paddle up to a tree and then pop up into the heavy current and pick. So I tree hopped there, and it was way easier. There's all kinds of little tricks and skills you learn, but you don't know until you get in that situation and figure it out. You can see a big roll of bark on the canoe now. That's because when I used up my small roll for patching the canoe, I harvested more on the Big Fork River downriver. Look at Kitigan, she looks trail weary to me. She's saying the same thing to me. Another significant archaeological site was where the Big Fork flowed into the Rainy River. Anyone know what's there? It's the Grand Mounds. Yes. Yeah. Considered the oldest and largest, I believe, in the state. So I'm sure there's a story there to be learned. Why were they there? Why that location? Good hunting, good fishing, strategic. Many reasons, I'm sure. So I paddled from International Falls, which is on the Rainy River at the Canadian border. So I'm heading east, going through Voyageurs National Park. Big waters there. I didn't expect all the motorboats and houseboats and float planes. I ate a lot of wakes, but made it through the big water. And on Rainy Lake, I paddled into Ernest Oberholzer's Mallard Island. And I had contacted them in the winter and said, I'm probably paddling through this summer. Can I stop by and visit? They said, sure, stop in. So I did. And had a good visit. And I did that on my whole route. I stopped and visited family and friends, people along the way. I took my time.
Can you remind us who Ernest Oberholzer?
Yes. So Ernest Oberholzer was one of the early conservationists that fought tooth and nail to not only protect some of these lands, but also kind of butted heads with lumber baron Edward Backus, and to my understanding, helped prevent the damming of the Rainy River watershed, or this landscape would be significantly different. He was also befriended by the local Ojibwe and vice versa, and has many stories, and did a significant trip way up in Canada to Hudson Bay with his native guide or friend, and as I understand, they paddled off any maps, so they were out there. You can see I'm packing up, going through my final food pack. And I had to wait. Here's part of the story that gets interesting now. So I was in Crane Lake because I had to pick up my boundary waters overnight paddle permit to go through the boundary waters. And I got there 4 days early. Great, right? Well, Don came up and met me, and we drove down to the Boys Fort Powell. And we ran into a friend of ours, Calvin Ottertail, who has since passed away. But he was from the Naguaguan Lac La Croix First Nation Reserve. And I had met him when he was working in Grand Portage. And he was a language instructor. That's where I met him, for taking some of the Ojibwe language classes. But he would come visit me as I'd be building canoes. And a number of times he asked me if I could help him steam bend drum wooden posts. And we got to be friends. So when we ran into him in Lake Vermilion, Powell, he said, "You're paddling through? Well, stop by and see me." So I left Crane Lake with a permit and got on to Lac La Croix. And then when I was paddling, beautiful day, calm as glass. I paddled into the reserve on the Canadian side there, and stashed the canoe in Kitigan at the dock, guarding the food pack as always. And I walked up and found Calvin's house. And he wasn't home, but his daughter was. And said, he's off traveling. So I said, well, all right, say hi. So I was walking back down to the water, and there were a couple people on the porch that said, "Hey, who are you? Come here." I introduced myself, and once they understood that Calvin had invited me, they opened the door for me. And a storm blew in, and they took care of me for 3 days. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. This is at Crane Lake. This is the photo on the right. Kitigan there is just shaking the water off her because she went for a swim. And the photo on the left is the Vermilion Gorge. Flows from Lake Vermilion north and enters the Rainy River at Crane Lake. So this is Lac La Croix. You can see the storm I was talking about in the upper left. And the bottom left is where they recommended I camp the night after the storm. And the fellow in the lush green forest with two of my packs is one of the guys from the Lac La Croix Reserve that said, "I'll help you." Yeah, beautiful. We exchanged gifts. It was a powerful experience. The way it should be.
I saw that your lower photo is the calendar for September, the month of September, because I saw that today. And I was like, oh my goodness. And that's with Raven?
Yeah, Raven Press.
With Raven Press, yes. And it happened to be today, or this month of September.
Wow. Yes,
And
perfect.
so it worked out perfect, yeah.
So that was a photo I took on the trip in 2009. And Johnny Hyde, that publishes the Boundary Waters calendar every year, often sees if I have a photo she can use. And this was one of them. That's what Bonnie's referring to. But I like it because it shows how the shoreline handles rough water, and over time, how the big pines can only grow that far from the water's edge, and how even the soil gets eroded on the first 10, 15 feet up. And then the photo on the right is known as Warrior Hill, in kind of southeast Lac La Croix, because it's a steep, hard climb. And it was a challenge for the young boys to see who could climb and who couldn't. Yes. And that was in, I think, early July. And no, that would have been in the end of June. And the blueberries at the top were ripe.
Really?
Yes, very good. Nowhere else did I find ripe blueberries for another month and a half. special place. The left is Bottle Portage, known as Bottle Portage, and on the east end of Lac La Croix on the border. Anyone recognize the falls in the middle? Curtain Falls. That's on the west end of Crooked Lake. And the photo on the right is paddling up the Basswood River, which is also kind of Crooked Lake, kind of a transition period. Notice my sail. Every time I had a tailwind, I would put that little cedar and my birch bark perpendicular to my keel to catch the wind. It was a game changer, especially on Lake Superior. And I didn't want any bigger sail because I couldn't move around in that small craft. I was kind of wedged in, almost like a kayak. You just can't turn around in a kayak and, check your bags in the back. That's kind of how that small canoe was. So I used the wind all the time. And like on the Rainy River, when I said the current was so strong, I would ferry across it. Sometimes you have these almost like oxbow bends. And to paddle around the outside on the side I was on would have been a mile. I could ferry effortlessly straight across the river. If you keep your canoe at a perfect 45, you let the current push it. So I glide across, and then I paddle around the inside of that bend, and I glide across. I do that with wind. All kinds of tricks. So this, the pinnacle of my journey. And here's why. Oh, this is powerful. This is beautiful. I was really starting to feel connected to the land. And that's a powerful thing. And I'm sure we've all sensed that in some ways. Different areas are different. But for me, I had paddled this country, guiding trips for many years prior to that. And I knew that as I paddled on the Basswood Lake, once I rounded, if I remember right, I think it's called American Point, and you head back into the lower part of Basswood, I'd hit motorboats. And I was procrastinating. So I camped here, I think, 3 or 4 nights. And it was just, I knew it was the crux, or the best part of the trip. And I knew it was my favorite country, from Lac La Croix to Basswood. And I saw wolves behind the camp, up on the ridge one night. The stars were bright. The fire was hotter than ever. It was just one of those special moments. And the last night I was there, and I should say, the whole trip I dreamed really well. Really powerful dreams. It was like my whole body was cleansed and purified every day. It was incredible. We can all do that. I'm sure we do to varying degrees. But there's something special about being so immersed in nature that you feel it. And the last night I woke up because there was this, what I describe as an old woman talking on the wind. And I listened to it for a long time. It was kind of a stern lecture. And to me, it seemed to be in the Anishinaabe voice. But I couldn't understand it. But I could understand the tone. And as I listened, I slowly woke up. And then when I was wide awake, I continued to hear that voice. I've never experienced that before. And it was many years since I'd ever heard that tone again. And only once have I heard it. And that was in, I forget the year, I think it was 2018. Josephine Mendowman, known as the Water Walker. She's an Anishinaabe woman from Lake Huron, Wikwemikong First Nation, I believe. And I was invited to her opening ceremony for departing on her last water walk before she passed away. And she walked from Lake Superior to the Atlantic Ocean to promote taking care of the water and women's role in safeguarding water. And she would carry water. And part of her party got a hold of me and asked if I could have her carry a canoe in some way. And that didn't really work out. I mean, it's hard to carry a canoe. They were willing to take turns. I gave her all the materials of the canoe, and she carried it. And after her journey, one of her friends or team members returned that to me. But at her opening ceremony, her brother gave a long, powerful talk about the area, their culture, their history. And when she spoke, it was kind of that stern lecture. And what she was saying is, we collectively, we all need to teach our children better. We need to do better. That was my takeaway anyway. And I feel that's kind of what I was hearing from that basswood wind. Important. And I share that because I think they would want it to be shared. And I agree. Oh. So I rounded Basswood Lake, American Point. And on the east side of Basswood is Bailey Bay, which I've been windbound on many times in my life. And I was crossing Bailey Bay the next day, and I was in the middle of it. It's about 3 miles across, I'd say, round. And sure enough, the wind kicked up. It was a little choppy. And all of a sudden, my canoe gets lifted up out of the water and surged forward. I felt the instability. It was a huge fish. I'd never heard of that. Everyone I've talked to has never heard of that. This is my rendition of what I felt.
Oh my gosh.
I made that on clay to remember. This is what I want my friend that sketched the cougar bear to sketch this, because I can describe it to him. He knows me. I know his style. I think he would do it justice. Yeah.
Sturgeon?
That's my guess. It had to be something big. But it didn't tip me. Easily could have. And instantly I felt this friendship. It was like he was saying, you know, good on you. Keep moving. I'll help you. High five. That's what I felt. But yeah, it is a powerful trip. The moose had started to decline, and I saw very few moose. But I saw this one. This was up on Otter Track, or Little Knife Lake, I think. I saw a lot of wildlife, a lot of wildlife. I didn't mention it, but how are we doing on time? I'm getting there. Keep talking. Okay. The only dead eagle I saw in my life was about 5 miles downstream from the paper mill in International Falls. Partially decomposed, floating in the riverbank. Sad. Otherwise, a lot of healthy looking wildlife. Critical Superior sign. This is at Prairie Portage, northeast of Ely. Just talking about the collaboration work between nations and provincial and state governments to protect the waters. So July 4th came around, and I paddled into Sauna's Canoe Base, now known as the Northern Tier High Adventure Base of the Boy Scouts. It's where I started guiding canoe trips when I was 17. And when I was young, I remember the old guys would paddle in. It didn't matter if they were coming off the road or the water. And the thing is, they raid the kitchen. So I pull in there, and no one's working because it's the 4th of July. And so I saw some staff sitting around a picnic table. This was about 5 p.m. or so. And this one guy gets up and said, "Eric, we thought you might stop in. Let's go raid the kitchen." So they treated me well, and the sauna was still super hot. So it was a delight. This is the Thunder Point Overlook, I believe it's called. This is on Knife Lake, looking west, where the south arm and north arm split. One of my favorite photos as well. I knew Dorothy Moulter well. We used to fill her ice house using dog teams to haul the ice up. And when I'd stop there with my crews, by the end of summer, she'd get kind of fed up with tourists and she'd kind of survey and go hide. But in the winter, in the spring and fall, the few times I was up there, she'd talk your ear off. That's a good dog.
Is the dog on a leash or the canoe?
I think we're all connected there.
Yeah.
With or without a leash. This is along the Granite River, north of Gunflint. Blueberry Portage. And some places along the route, I would feel energy. And going through this portage, up that crack in the rock, I call them portals. And I kicked the otter. I saw a lot of otters. The photo on the left is another 3 a.m. start because thunderstorm was rolling in and it nailed me, so I'm just coming out of a thunderstorm and safe enough to take the camera. But just before this, there was probably 30 mile per hour winds across that. Right, it was getting daylight, so I was paddling hard once again using the wind to ferry. But this is, anyone recognize this location? It's east of there. It's this is on South Fall, kind of the last major lake of the Boundary Waters before it turns into the Pigeon River, descending to Lake Superior. But this rock, this cliff up there, is sometimes referred to as Goose Rock, and it's a really powerful place. I used to live right by it, maybe 5 miles south of there, in a bush cabin, and so I've been around this area quite a bit. And quite often I see raptors just soaring right above the cliff. There must be I don't know, probably the heat of the rock face and an uplift, that's what I'm guessing. But I always see peregrine falcons and eagles and hawks. Beautiful. So that's on top of the Goose Rock, looking west across South Fall and then North Fall. Back towards Gunflint, towards us.
Yeah.
Your canoe ever leak? Yeah. But you can fix it up, keep paddling. It's amazing. This is a beautiful canoe. It's hanging just east of here. How many know where it is? It's in Bearskin Lodge. And when I was guiding the dog trips with the McClellans, Sue McClellan, bless her heart, I was going to go on a canoe trip. It was her idea to start a blog. And so I journal, and I'd mail my journal entries into her, and she would post them online. And by the time I got to Duluth and got rescued, I had thousands of hits, I guess. I didn't know it. Anyway, yeah. It's hanging in Bearskin Lodge. And it's in safekeeping. And they really helped me on that trip as well. Le Grand Portage. Well, that's the story. Short version. You'll have to wait for the book. Thank you for listening. Kiitos, that's thank you in Finnish. And miigwech is thank you in Ojibwe, Anishinaabe.
Did you use up all your pitch?
I used up all my pitch many times. I kept collecting.
Is that how the natives were fixed too? The natives pitch?
Yep.
Where would they get pitch from?
Most any evergreen tree.
Oh, that kind of
Yep, just from the trees. But pitch alone is too brittle. So you want to temper it somehow. Some kind of animal fat or fish oil. I have some materials. I can pass these around. I'll just show them. But this is pitch. Now it's hardened, but this pitch is mixed with charcoal and bear grease. And the recipe is key, not getting it too brittle or too slippery so it melts in the sun and runs. But as the temperature changes, you want to mix it differently. So like when I started in winter conditions in April, I put a lot more bear grease in it. I'll pass things around. And when you heat that up, it smells wonderful. So some of the other materials then, birch bark. I've got a sheet here that's kind of medium thickness, nice quality. Normally when it's dry, it's real brittle. But this is such good quality, you can flex it a little bit. Here's a end of a rib, white cedar. So the birch bark is harvested and formed, bending it up, usually on the ground, into the shape of a canoe. And then you sew the gunwales on and lash them together with roots. Spruce root, this is dry, kind of brittle, but get a feel for it, extremely strong. And then the white cedar is used for most of the wood in the canoe. The planks of the floor, the ribbing, which are the real strength, just like your body. The canoe is a vessel, just like our body is a vessel. So the birch bark is the skin of the canoe, and then the ribs are made of cedar.
You have to steam them to get them to bend?
Normally you steam bend, yes. Somehow you use moisture and heat. Many different ways to do that. A green tree and just soaking it will be somewhat flexible. If you do it real slow and do it many times in a row, you can make bends, but it's much easier to heat it. So usually heat and water to steam bend. I'm not going to pass these around, but I'll show you. Anyone know what this is?
Rib bone.
Yep, rib bone of what?
Moose.
A moose, yep. But this is up high on the rib cage. That's why it's so short. Because they're flat and they make good tools. So this is used for carving and scraping. So think, before steel goods, the canoes were built for thousands of years by the native people. You use what you can get, and this was one of the preferred rib bones that is naturally pretty sharp. It's stained because of all the spruce roots that I've been debarking. But this is a good tool. I use it for prying, scraping, and even carving, and you can sharpen these on a rock. So,
Question about the birch.
yes.
So the paper, the white paper that we see, that comes off and this is just underneath it?
So the dark side you're pointing at, the yellow side, that's the inside that goes next to the cambium, the inner bark.
Okay.
And you see the curvature on that is, as you take the bark off of the tree, it was curled like it's around the trunk, but as it dries, it has a tendency to curl the opposite. And so that's why you invert it when you make the canoe hull. So it curls in, making a strong hull. So the birch bark canoes you see are kind of yellow or orange on the outside. And then over time they'll fade or bleach to a white by sunlight. Okay, so this is a rib bone. And once steel came, the knives were made this shape and used as a pulling knife known as a crooked knife. Wagikoman, a crooked knife. The other primary tool is an awl for poking holes in the bark to lace with the wet spruce roots. When the roots are wet, like they grow underground in the spruce bogs, very flexible, very strong. That's why they were used. But this is a deer antler, just sharpened and ground on a rock until it's the right shape. And so I go through these every canoe, because with use, you want to keep your roots wet so they slide and stay flexible. And then if you're passing a root through the same hole more than once, you often have to spread it again, and then the tip of your bone all gets wet, and then it gets soft and it erodes. So they wear out quickly when you're doing a lot of canoe work. And then I have one other artifact, and it's one of my favorite pieces. It's a rock. And it's not a spear point like many archaeologists look for, in that it's not obsidian or quartz or jasper or any hard flaking rock. It's just, I believe it's basalt or slate. I think it's basalt. But it's the perfect shape and weight. And so I found this partway through the trip, and I used it for everything. So for protection at night, I had it under my pillow or nearby. It's just the right size and shape. It's not too heavy to carry. I used it to scrape. I used it as a map pointer. I use it for many things. But to me, this is really precious because it means a lot. And I carried it on my journey, and you know, someday it'll go back to the bottom of the river. And I think that speaks to the Arrowhead Journey. You know, this could be worked, this could be used to hunt game. If this is all you got, you know, just using your arm, it's powerful.
Where did you find it? Do you know?
Yeah, it's a special spot along the route. And I'll probably bring it back there. So, anyway, any other questions or thoughts?
Eric, when can we expect your book?
I'm hoping to have it published within 5 years.
Okay.
So I'm currently working a lot, and I have been since 2009, and that's my biggest limitation, is just time constraints. But I did go back to school, and I finished a bachelor's, and then just this May I graduated from UMD with a master's.
Congratulations.
I've learned a lot, and the whole time I was in studies, the main question is, how do I tell this story the best way I can? So my graduate degree was in tribal resource and environmental stewardship. So I've learned a lot from the indigenous people. There's a lot to be gained from sharing some of those worldviews, like caretaking. We often talk about science and environmental stewardship, and they have their own words for it, and they mean slightly different, but the net outcome, I think, is much the same. So caretaking, looking at a holistic way and observing are very powerful ways of dealing or learning from the natural world and behaving in a way that is supporting community and all beings. Yes. Well, thank you everyone again.
Thank you.